I've never met you before, but I know of your reputation. And based on what Representative Jones just said, that he was the beneficiary of a lot of folks in the past leaving a legacy for a quality education in North Reading, I have a sense that you have maximized that opportunity based on what I know about you. So I wonder how you would comment based on what you've experienced, the environment of your school, the pride that you have, the experience you've had with your education, and how you envision the future students of North Reading benefiting from the legacy we're going to leave them.
Michael's presently a student here at North Reading, class of 2013. Michael, the floor is yours.
I actually prepared a statement.
Next year, he'll be running for state rep.
Hold on. It is one thing to hear about the problems with the school or to see them in a video, but I live with them from 7:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. every Monday through Friday. I walk through the halls that are so crowded they look like the T during rush hour. I have classes where I can barely get to my desk because the classes are so packed and there is barely any place to walk. I have had a class in a classroom that used to be a garage, and for that matter, it still looks like one. I have classes where you have to strain yourself to hear the teachers because the heater is so loud that you can barely hear over it. I have friends who refuse to use the laboratories in school because the bathrooms have deteriorated that much. I do not know one person who uses the lockers we were assigned because they are barely big enough to fit one of the giant textbooks we were given. I am in 2 science classes that compete with the other 47 sections of science classes for the use of our only 2 science labs. And I could continue to list off problems like this for the next 10 minutes, but I feel my point's been made. The school has serious problems that cannot be fixed easily using duct tape to try and get it up to code. The high school was built in 1955, and for the most part, it's very similar to what it was back then. What students needed then and what students need in the 21st century is not the same. The schools of our nation are training our youth to compete not only with the citizens of our country, but the citizens of the world. How is a student like me or my peers supposed to compete in a global economy when the school I'm learning at is 50 years behind the world I'm entering? Our town has the incredible opportunity to pass a new building project and have up to 52% of the refundable costs paid for by the government. If we do not take this money, some other town will. And this is our money to be lost. A percentage of the taxes paid by the residents of this town goes into the fund for building new schools. That means if we do not use the money to build a school in a different community, why would we throw away our own money? Marshfield, Concord, Carlisle, Glenfield, and Wakefield have already seen many benefits of a plan similar to ours and have accepted the building plan in their town. We need to follow suit. I will not attend a class in the new school building, so personally, I have very little to gain from this project being passed. What I do see, though, is what this new school building means to the students that will come after me and the entire town as a whole. Children are our future, and this project invests in that. What could possibly be worth investing in? Thank you for allowing me to express my opinion on this important matter. I have great faith in the people of North Reading, and I know this is the right thing. Thank you.
Good question, Deanna. Good answer, Michael. This school is so old that Chuck Carucci, our chairman, was in the first graduating class. All right, next question.
Michael, thank you very much for your thoughtful answer. My next questions are for Mr. Bernard and for Principal O'Connell as well. Can you please address one thing that Michael just talked about as far as the situation where we're chasing science classrooms, how many there are currently, how many you need to have, how you actually make that all work, and can you also speak to the opportunities for technology and some of the the constraints that you have been living under for several years regarding that, and then what you see as a vision for the future in those particular areas.
Thank you. I can speak about the middle school. Obviously, I've only been there since the beginning of the school year. There currently are 4 laboratories, but only 2 are fully functional in terms of gas and the things that science classrooms need for labs. The grade 6 science classrooms are just classrooms that we use for science. I know that in the new building there will be 6 science laboratories, state-of-the-art science laboratories, and I can't underestimate that one of the biggest jobs Mr. Bernard and I have in the future is hiring highly effective, intelligent, energetic staff. And when we are competing with other towns who have brand new facilities, and any of the neighboring towns are either in the process or already have them, we're going to be hard-pressed to convince someone to come to North Reading if we cannot offer them a telephone in their classroom. Currently in the middle school, the teachers do not have telephones in their classrooms, so when we talk about communication with parents, it's very difficult to make a phone call. You need to come down to the office and use one phone line, basically. So the technology and the ability to really change the way we are asking our teachers to, bring their curriculum alive to students, we are really holding them back with the facility. So I think that the new facility would truly change the way our teachers are able to do the job that we hired them for. So I really think we can't underestimate not only the science, but all of the technology in the classroom space. Mr. Bernard?
I'm struck by one part of your question, Mrs. Castro, about how do we make it work with the 2 science labs that we have to service what is undoubtedly our most vibrant program at the high school, and that is in science. We run 49 sections of science, which is a significant amount, and they're almost all lab sciences. And part of your question was, how do we make it work? And if I'm really honest with you all, I don't know how we make it work, but we make it work. And if I were to point to the reasons why I think it does work, it has a lot to do with our teachers, who are very committed to ensuring that our students have the most lab opportunities that they can have. So I don't, as the principal, make it work. The staff makes it work. I could point to very specific examples where teachers have given up the opportunity to have what I would call their own classroom, a class where they would teach all of their 5 classes in, so that they could make those spaces available to other teachers and other students to use as labs. That happens far too frequently, far more often than certainly I would like. So consequently, what happens is you have teachers in the science department sharing classrooms and deciding, sitting down and very logistically figuring out when they can do labs with their students so that they don't compete against each other. But the reality of that is that we are not able to offer the number of labs in our lab sciences to be completed that we would like to do. As this project has unfolded, there's been a lot of gathering of data and analysis of that data. And at one time, I was surprised to learn that we have about 155% rate of participation in science classes among our students. That tells you that students are averaging 1.5 science classes over their career. Many of our students double up in science. They're required to take a course, at least one course in science in each of the 4 years. Many more students exceed that. Michael alluded to the 2 that he takes as a junior, and I'd be willing to bet he's probably going to be taking 2 as a senior. That's not unusual. So it's nice in one respect that our science program is and remains a very vibrant one, but when you're competing for the lab space to the degree that we are, I don't believe that students are getting the very best that they can get. I think they're getting very good, but I don't think they're getting the very best that they can get. To the point of technology, the truth of the matter is that our ability to utilize technology at its highest level is compromised by simple things in this building, like concrete and steel, that just do not allow for internet signals to cross where they need to in order to gather the kind of information or to communicate at the level that we want through technology. It's an old school that we're trying to retrofit into the 21st century. I think Michael said it well. How can I be expected to enter a 21st century life in a building that was built in the it's difficult. Now again, I'm not a person that likes to offer up things as scare tactics or threats. That's just not my style. We do a good job here. Our teachers work very hard and our students work equally hard. But it's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain that because technology is one area where it's evolving so rapidly that for us to keep up in a building of this age and this style, it's just we're competing against ourselves, let alone providing our students with the opportunities to compete with their peers. So the new school, it's designed around technology. I mean, where the whole concept is 21st century learning, technology is a central part to that. In the school, I can only imagine will allow us to do that at a level that for some it's probably even difficult to imagine. But I think it's safe to say that it would increase exponentially.
Good evening. My question is based on what you've been speaking about in reference to if things don't change and this doesn't pass and the cost of things staying the same, has it been discussed what the cost would be to improve what we currently have in relation to what our cost would be if we move forward with our 55 million cost? Like, what would it take to update what we currently have?
That's a great question. Brad Dorr, our architect, has been working on that and has, I think, some information that he can respond to your question with.
So as part of the evaluation process, we go through a scenario that we call a no-build option, which is really to look at what would it take to bring these buildings, the existing high school and the existing middle school, into compliance so that it takes care of building code deficiencies, handicap accessibility deficiencies, fire safety, life safety types of deficiencies, as well as looking at what we characterize as deferred maintenance issues. So in terms of looking at those types of elements and what would be required, we sent teams through both buildings to go and identify what those requirements would be, and then worked with the facilities with Wayne Hardacker and the administration to go and say, in terms of deferred maintenance, the deferred maintenance example is the mechanical systems that have been here. A lot of them are original equipment, and over time they're going to have to be replaced. There's only a limited amount of service life, so that's an example. We'd have to replace the boilers or replace the HVAC system, as well as making sure that handicap accessibility, seismic code requirements, all of those things are taken care of. So when we looked at both buildings, we looked at that in terms of both the time period that would take place, and we assumed a 10-year period. And if you took all of those things and used a 3% escalation factor, factoring in those improvements over 10 years, it's about $47.5 million that would be required to go and put those improvements into place. And so that takes into account, again, accessibility, structural requirements, building envelope requirements, things when you go in and you have to take care of sprinklers. Most likely you're going to have to go and redo a lot of the ceiling tiles and all of that. So all of those things are factored into that discussion. So I think an important part of looking at this no-build option is to go and say, for $47 million over a period of 10 years, you would be able to bring these buildings into compliance. However, you would not be addressing the space and educational issues that currently are in play. And one of the gentlemen in the back of the room had a question there about, we're looking at this over 50 years and what's the flexibility built into the building, and are we thinking about the future? Just to give you some perspective, right now the current building square footage is about 218,000 square feet. What we're proposing is about 267,000 square feet plus or minus to accommodate those educational and programmatic deficiencies that currently exist in the building. And what the MSBA requirement or guideline would be is about 235,000 square feet. So the district was very successful in their negotiation process with the MSBA to accommodate some of that additional space. So the $47 million fixes up the building but does not address that. And this is really an important point, is that cost is not reimbursable. So that's a full freight item for the town. Looking at the other, which is the $105 to $110 million project for everything addressing new buildings